My questions to start off with would be on post-2015 participatory process that has just ended. Tell us broadly what that was.
It was a huge exercise because remember the MDGs were not the product of a specific consultation exercise. Nonetheless, they got great traction and people have been reporting against the MDGs, trying to achieve them. Development partners have been supporting them all these years. But we come to 2015. That's when the targets expire. Are we just going to all go back to business as it was before 2000, or are we going to have a new global development agenda which will mobilise and unify people around a cause again? We've had the online surveys asking people for their views. We've had huge national consultations. We've had consultations around specific themes from inequality to health and education to conflict, peace and development to environmental sustainability. And it's meant that there's been much broader engagement from the people of the world than we've seen before in any UN or exercise.
Were there any targets against how many people were expected to participate? What was the process of getting that those voices heard?
What we did with the national consultations, the governments have been very keen to have these. We've had them in about 100 countries. The government buys in, but so does civil society. Was anyone bold enough to say at the start, can we reach 1 million people? Maybe not, but I think we will.
So I wanted to speak a bit more about you've mentioned a little bit about the role technology played specifically in this, but people also query how useful is technology as a medium, especially if we're talking about countries that don't have proliferation of internet access. How did you take that into account? Did you use mobile? What were the means of technology?
So firstly, that's why the sort of pen and paper filling in the survey was important. The people who didn't have access to the internet themselves, but the data could be gathered from the paper, punched in, and their voices became part of the global voice. While at this time for people, ICT may be a phone, voice only, it may be text, it may not be internet. Nonetheless, you can still find ways of reaching out and getting the voice back. Take, for example, the use of technology in the uprising in Egypt 2.5 years ago. A lot of people didn't even have text, but there was a facility then, an innovation that said talk to text, so people could phone in their message. That could be texted, that could be tweeted, and away it went.
I would like for us to talk more about technology more broadly and how it's disrupting global development, how it's disrupting governance. But you had alluded to the fact that the MDGs still have another 2 and some years to go. What happens next?
We will keep open the online platform for people to be heard, and I think there will also be more national and other consultations. But the big phase of that has been had. Now, the high-level panel report, which the UN Secretary-General commissioned, has also been presented. But let's just see this as stage one, because the action has now shifted to the UN General Assembly, which was asked by the Rio +20 Summit on Sustainable Development to appoint an open working group to work on Sustainable Development Goals. That working group is now working, and many governments are represented on it. It will not report until September next year. When it reports, that will be, I think, the trigger for the UN member states, the 193, to start negotiating what the next goals will be. In the end, member states will negotiate this agenda. So the UK government needs to hear from its citizens. The government of Benin, Nigeria need to hear. The government of Brazil needs to hear from its citizens. What do you want your government to be saying in these negotiations? So don't go to sleep is my message.
This process of mass global consultation might actually force or trigger some countries who traditionally have not been responsive to the needs of their citizens or to have not listened to civil society with the pressure that is coming from the multilaterals and their bilateral donors through this process. Will they be more interested? Conversely, will donors be able to use this agenda as a way of driving forward what they're thinking on any particular topic? So if they think a country should do something around adolescent girls and the the government's interests don't lie there, can they use this as a way of saying, well, actually, look, 300,000 of your citizens have said this is important. So how do you think that the outcomes might be manipulated for good or bad?
Well, all the data from these consultations is now available on web. People can use it, people can analyse it. And so it's entirely possible for advocacy groups to pull out, for example, how many people in a given country expressed a view strongly on one thing or another. You see, when you look at what might be surprising to some from the consultation, the tick for honest and open government got about third place in the whole survey. I mean, this is a big thing with people. Now, it's traditionally been a bit hard to negotiate into specific development documents the role of governance, of more democratic, more accountable, responsive, transparent, honest government. But people's voices are saying this, and I don't think this can be easily brushed aside. The quality of governance does matter to how development proceeds in a country. Is it equitable? Is it fair? Is it privileging some, marginalising others? So I think it can only be to the good to have all these voices speaking, to have it reported on, to have the information broken down so we know what the citizens in my country, yours, others actually were saying. That then becomes a bit of a prod to governments not to ignore these issues.